Excuse me one second here. There we go. Okay, now we'll open in a word of prayer. Lord, thanks for the day. Pray that you'll bless our time together today. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, as you might appreciate, there's a lot to discuss about, to talk about. I did do a interview with Brian Schrager from Israel with my friend from the UK, Mark Sutherland, on, I think that was Friday. We hope to follow up and do another one on Tuesday. Brian, as you know, lives in Israel. And so we're trying to get his perspective on, you may have heard that there were some things going on in Israel and Iran this week. And I always start my update week with trying to catch up on things that I want to talk about in the future. And then reality has a way of sort of intruding into that. Particularly this week. And so I try to organize everything, but I will tell you that eventually I just give up because this week was probably the worst week. So anyway, so we, as you know, we talk about things in Bible prophecy here, and I think, boy, we're seeing a lot of things happening right now that are prophetically significant. I can't say that they're exactly fulfilling Bible prophecy, but they certainly are in the really serious stage setting things. So this week we're seeing a lot of things, and there's a lot of dispute in the Bible prophecy community. Are the seals opening? Have they already opened? They have to open at a certain period of time. I'm sort of taking an open view on this. I think that, as with most Bible prophecy, the declaration that this is that which is a fulfillment of the prophecies of the Bible is going to be something we'll be able to say looking backwards, not necessarily looking forward and saying this is exactly how it has to work out. Because, for example, this week we saw a bit of a, shall we say, a dust up between Israel and Iran. And we know that in Ezekiel 38 and 39, it talks about Persia coming in. That's clearly Iran. I mean, that's really one of the ones in Ezekiel 38, 39 that's easy. Persia, and then the regions of Turkey. So we know Turkey and Persia for sure, and then we argue about Russia and that type of thing. And so, but, the question is, how does this play into it, say, a future Ezekiel 38 and 39? And is this Ezekiel 38 and 39? And I think pretty clear that it's not, but it certainly shows the tension there. But how does that change if the Iranian regime falls? Which is a distinct possibility. I think that's the goal of a lot of people. So I'm going to try to, I'm going to go through some of the things this week that happened, and then I have one thing at the end that's something sort of related but off topic, but related to everything we talk about. I also want to remind you, so there'll be I will be doing a thing with Brian Schrager this week. Probably will be doing some others. I know Thursday at, I think it's 3:00 Eastern, I'll be doing something with Kurt Reed on his YouTube channel, and I'm sure some other things will come up in the meantime. And also on June 25th, a week from Wednesday, at 7 p.m. Eastern, we'll be doing although it might start at 7:15 because I have another obligation that keeps me occupied until 7 p.m. May start at 7:15, but that will be a prophecy roundtable on technocracy, transhumanism. And the thing that I'm talking about at the end, that will probably come up, and I think you'll see why. And I'm almost certain that I don't usually say this because everybody's talking about the same thing. I'm pretty sure nobody else is going to be talking about this last thing that I'm talking about today. So you have to stay all the way to the end. You say no with your mouth, but your heart, you'll be staying. So it seems like the one thing that's interesting about this time that we're alive is that the speed of things happening warps time. So, for example, when was it that Israel launched an attack on Iran? It was Thursday, right? Thursday night. But it seems like it was like a week ago, right? Because there's so much that's happened in the interim in the response of Iran. So this is from Israel Hayom's paper this morning, and this is just sort of a summary of all the papers around the world and what they're talking about. This attack between Israel attacked Iran, and you can see there the map in the center, the places that were attacked. It was a stunning operation, so I'm going to probably repeat myself a little bit as I go through this. It was an amazing operation. It had some hallmarks of the operation that Ukraine did against Russia. And we know from the attack that Russia did, or Ukraine did against Russia a couple weeks ago now, or a week ago. I don't even remember, was it a week or 2 weeks ago? I think it was 2 weeks ago. That it was a pretty amazing operation. It had been in planning for 18 months. They were able to assemble drones and even manufacture drones in Russia and transport them close to the bases, because there's a couple things about drones. Drones are a huge change in warfare, and they're making warfare very asymmetrical, but there are limitations on drones. Drones generally, particularly if you're putting a heavy payload on them. So think of the DJI drones that you see down at Best Buy or other electronic stores, and you put explosives package on there, it's going to limit how far that drone can fly. So you have to get the drones close to the bases. So in the case of the Ukraine attack on Russia, they had to have some of those drones within 2 kilometers, that's 1.2 miles, of the target. Then they have to figure out the logistics. Okay, how are we going to get them there? How are they going to be fresh? How are we going to do this by stealth? So what Ukraine did was they set up a trucking company, and it appears that they also set up a defense manufacturing company within Russia. And they used people that were intelligence assets that don't like the Russian regime and want to help Ukraine. So they exploited that, and it appears they got a lot of people to do this. And some people may have been doing things and they didn't even know what was in the truck they were driving. I mean, it's sort of like you go to the store, your wife is in shopping, she brings all the bags out to the car. You don't know what's in there. You just trust that she's not, planting a bomb in your car, right? And usually that's the case, but we know that things can change rather rapidly in a relationship of that kind. And I'm not referring to myself by any stretch of the imagination, but the stealth nature of modern warfare is pretty amazing. So we had a big example of this back last September, October. It seems like it was years ago now, doesn't it? The beeper attack, where Israel took out a huge number of Hezbollah fighters. Israel had also begun decapitating the Hezbollah leadership. They had decapitated the Hamas leadership. And there's always people to replace them. That's not the issue. But the issue is the people who've been organizing these things for a long time, all of a sudden they're gone. And that puts a big hole in their operational capabilities. So Israel planned, for example, in the case of the beeper attack, 60 Minutes did a pretty good video on it, or a segment on it. That thing had been planned for 10 years. They had operatives. They set up a company to get Hezbollah to buy these things. They then had to manufacture them. They had to change one of the batteries to a stealth part of the beeper to include explosives that would cause damage. And they also thought it through that, listen, if we had these guys with the beepers, it's very likely that the only people that are going to be hurt when these things explode are the people that are using the beepers. That would be people at Hezbollah and others. But what happened was that it appeared in the beeper case, the case of the beepers, was that the plot was about ready to be exposed. Some people were questioning, I believe, like, why is my battery not lasting that long? And so before people started tearing apart the beepers to find out what was wrong and discovering that there was explosives in there, Israel had to act. So that operation planned for 10 years. By most estimates of what I've seen is the operation that took place this week using people on the ground inside Iran, Mossad agents and other assets that they had developed over time, had been in the planning stages for 20 years. So when we talk about, the phrase that I use a lot when we look at some of these things in Bible prophecy and in the world today is it's gradually then suddenly. These things are planned, they're instituted, they're built up gradually, but then there's a sudden phase. And this week, we saw a lot of sudden phases. So Israel attacked bases. They used stealth fighters, F-35s and other fighters, I think 200 fighter jets. They refueled them. There's been refueling operations taking place, I've heard, over Syria, even refueling operations taking place over Iran. There are videos of that. And what does that tell you? If you're refueling, we had a friend that on the weekends, he was in Air Force Reserve, and he would fly tankers out of Rickenbacker Air Force Base down the south side of Columbus. Where'd you go this weekend? Saudi Arabia, India, and Greenland. That's what because they put these things in the air, and it's a giant fuel tank, and so it uses the fuel there too. So it can fly forever, it seems like. I mean, they would fly 20,000 miles before they came home. They're in the air forever. But when you're refueling something over a country that has, at least you think might have, air defenses, you're not likely to put a big giant fuel bomb up in the sky up there because you hit it and it blows up. And it goes boom really big. And it's a very big propaganda victory for the country that shoots it down. But the fact that Israel was doing refueling, and in some cases it's reported that American refuelers were being used by Israel to refuel the fighter jets. And so Israel engaged, I don't know how many sorties they ran. I don't have all the statistics on that. If you go to INSS, I think it's .org or .org.il. It's Institute for National Security Studies. It's a think tank in Israel. They've got a very good map of everything. The Institute for Study of War also has their blog site is understandingwar.org. And there's any number of places you go, you can find the maps. And we've had this stunning operation, Israel doing this. It's 1,000 miles at least. The fighter jets can't fly there and back, so they have to be refueled. But then they come back, they're refueled in air, but they have to come back and get more bombs. I was asking a friend who was a fighter pilot in Vietnam yesterday, I said, how much could you carry in your fighter jet when you flew bombing runs up to North Vietnam? And by the way, he told me, it was 58 years ago yesterday he got shot down in North Vietnam, spent 6 years at the Hanoi Hilton, and he had volunteered for one more mission. He did not have to do it. He volunteered for one more mission before he was to come home. And it cost him 6 years of his life. But he said, I think he said about 13,000 pounds, depending if it's full of fuel, it's, 13,000 pounds of explosives or munitions that you can carry. Now, munitions have changed a lot. The explosives are better than they were back 58 years ago, but it's still logistically, it's a very difficult thing. You've got to get the thing there, then you got to come back, you got to reload and go back. So even at, if the jet's flying 600 miles an hour, it gives the other side time to, they're going to come back. We can kind of figure out how to come back. So you can see Israel focused mostly on underground nuclear facilities, air defense systems, air bases. There was an air base in the northwest of Iran that was attacked. And there were some nuclear facilities attacked. My understanding is that the nuclear facilities have been damaged in many cases. But for example, some were not attacked. There's a big nuclear plant at Bushehr that would be located, that would be down here along the Persian Gulf. In the Bushehr plant, and historically in biblical times, that would have been the area known as Elam. So there's a prophecy in Jeremiah chapter 49 about Elam. So you can see right here is Bushehr. And so everybody this week, there was a lot of talk. Is this the fulfillment of the Bible prophecy of Elam? So in the Bible prophecy community, there's disagreement. Some people say that was already fulfilled. You don't need to worry about it anymore. Others say, no, it's this concept that we have in Bible prophecy of a double fulfillment. It's sort of almost fulfilled, and then it'll really be fulfilled in the future. And so it's a little bit tricky, because I can tell you, having read through most of these passages a number of times, the one thing that you don't see is there's no stamp there. There's no stamp that says this prophecy is going to be fulfilled twice. So, but we also know that in Jewish eschatology, pattern is prophecy. So, and I have something in my mind, but it will take me too long to unpack it, and I haven't gotten through any slides yet. So, we'll jump back and forth a little bit about these things that would have happened. So Israel decided the other night it had to act. So Netanyahu came on air, and he said, listen, we're going after them. And this was the statement that they had a big meeting. They decided this was the time. We're going to go forward. Let's see. And this had huge impacts in Israel. Ben Gurion Airport was closed. It's been pretty much closed. I understand private aircraft are coming and going, but the major airlines are sort of not prone to want to fly into a war zone with missiles flying around. Even if they're not necessarily going to hit the airport, it's just a very bad look for the airline. So they just, and you can see on the airline maps, the other interesting thing about this, there's no secrets anymore. There are flight trackers out there. You can track warplanes. You can track every ship on the ocean. Marinetraffic.com is an incredible website, and then you can sort it. You can sort it by container ships. You can sort it by tanker ships, and then you can see how it's going. And you can see, like back during the Charlie Vector 019er days, you could see how things were stacking up around Shanghai. Incredible number of ships, and no ships out on the ocean. And then for a while, the ships were stacking up like in Los Angeles Harbor. Then they were able to work that out. But with the Houthi attacks in the Persian Gulf, you can see that there's very little ship traffic going through the Persian Gulf, and it's having a big impact. So Amit Siegel, a good defense guy in Israel, dozens of targets were attacked. They had big meetings about this. So here's what Netanyahu said to announce it. This is about a 6 or 7 minute clip, but I'm going to just play the whole thing.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival. 80 years ago, the Jewish people were the victims of a Holocaust perpetrated by the Nazi regime. Today, the Jewish state refuses to be a victim of a nuclear Holocaust perpetrated by the Iranian regime. Now, as Prime Minister, I've made it clear time and again, Israel will never allow those who call for our annihilation to develop the means to achieve that goal. Tonight, Israel backs those words with action. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz. We targeted Iran's leading nuclear scientists working on the Iranian bomb. We also struck at the heart of Iran's ballistic missile program. Last year, Iran fired 300 ballistic missiles at Israel. Each of these missiles carries a ton of explosives and threatens the lives of hundreds of people. Soon, those missiles could carry a nuclear payload, threatening the lives not of hundreds, but of millions. Iran is gearing up to produce 10,000 of those ballistic missiles within 3 years. Now just imagine 10,000 tons of TNT landing on a country the size of New Jersey. This is an intolerable threat. It too must be stopped. Iran is now working on what it calls the new plan to destroy Israel. You see, the old plan failed. Iran and its proxies try to encircle Israel with a ring of fire and to attack us with the horrible attack of October 7th. But the people of Israel, the soldiers of Israel, rose like lions to defend our country. We crushed Hamas, we devastated Hezbollah, we hit Iranian proxies in Syria and Yemen. And when Iran directly attacked us twice last year, we struck back inside Iran itself. Yet in defending ourselves, we also defend others. We defend our Arab neighbors. They too have suffered from Iran's campaign of chaos and carnage. Our actions against Iran's proxy Hezbollah led to the establishment of a new government in Lebanon and the collapse of Assad's murderous regime in Syria. The peoples of those two countries now have a chance for a different future, a better future. So too do the brave people of Iran, and I have a message for them. Our fight is not with you. Our fight is with the brutal dictatorship that has oppressed you for 46 years. I believe that the day of your liberation is near. And when that happens, the great friendship between our two ancient peoples will flourish once again. I want to assure the civilized world, we will not let the world's most dangerous regime get the world's most dangerous weapons. And Iran plans to give those weapons, nuclear weapons, to its terrorist proxies. That would make the nightmare of nuclear terrorism all too real. The increasing range of Iran's ballistic missiles would bring that nuclear nightmare to the cities of Europe and eventually to America. Remember, Iran calls Israel the small Satan. It calls America the great Satan. And this is why for decades, it's led millions in the chants of death to Israel and death to America. Today, Israel is responding to those genocidal calls with action and with a call of our own. Long live Israel and long live America. Our action will help make the world a much safer place. I want to thank President Trump for his leadership in confronting Iran's nuclear weapons program. He has made clear time and again that Iran cannot have a nuclear enrichment program. Today, it is clear that Iran is just buying for time. It refuses to agree to this basic requirement of peaceful nations. That is why we have no choice but to act, and act now. The hardest decision any leader has to make is to thwart a danger before it is fully materialized. Nearly a century ago, facing the Nazis, a generation of leaders failed to act in time. They were paralyzed by the horrors of World War I. They were determined to avoid war at all costs, and they got the worst war ever. They adopted a policy of appeasement. They closed their eyes and ears to all the warning signs. That failure to act resulted in World War II, the deadliest war in history. It claimed the lives of 60 million, including 6 million Jews, a third of my people. After that war, the Jewish people and the Jewish state vowed, never again. Well, never again is now. Today, Israel has shown that we have learned the lessons of history. When enemies vow to destroy you, believe them. When enemies build weapons of mass death, stop them. As the Bible teaches us, when someone comes to kill you, rise and act first. This is exactly what Israel has done today. We have risen like lions to defend ourselves. Over 3,000 years ago, Moses gave the people of Israel a message that has steeled their resolve ever since. Be strong and courageous, he said. Today, our strong and courageous soldiers and people stand together to defend ourselves against those who seek our destruction. And by defending ourselves, we defend many others, and we roll back a murderous tyranny. Generations from now, history will record that our generation stood its ground, acted in time, and secured our common future. May God bless Israel. May God bless the forces of civilization everywhere. Thank you.
So look, Prime Minister Netanyahu has been going through a very tough time politically for many years. And in many respects, there are a lot of people in Israel that do not like him. And I will say that I love Israel. I've been there, hope to go there again. But I'm telling you that the Israel political system, I was there 2 years ago when they were forming the current government. It was, we went over to the Knesset as part of the media summit, met with legislatures. The government had not yet been formed, but the Knesset was meeting. And the whole thing sort of, to me, smacked of insanity. The way they organize things and the way they get these coalitions and they form coalitions, and this person doesn't like this person, and it's changed over the time. So, for example, there was a Knesset member, very intelligent lady, but she used to be in Likud. She's not in Likud anymore. I don't really want to name her because the point is not her. But then there was the new coalition. The new coalition had Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, and a lot of people and the others, even former Likud members, could not stand him. So when Ben-Gvir got up in the room just after all these other members of Knesset had spoken to us from all these different parties, including liberal parties, left parties, Ben-Gvir got up, and all of a sudden, all the other guys, they had an appointment they had to get to. They all had to make a point. I've got an appointment I got to get to. I just can't say. I would love to stay, but I have to go, and I have this other committee meeting, and blah, 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 because they didn't want to be seen in the same room with Ben-Gvir. And over the past week, there was some indication that maybe Netanyahu's coalition government was going to fall apart. He would have to resign. He would be a caretaker prime minister until yet another round of elections. I think that would be the sixth one in the last 3 or 4 years. 4 years. This one's lasted over 2 years, which is right up there. It's one of those biblical miracles that it's lasted that long. And Netanyahu is on trial. I'm a lawyer, so I can evaluate these things. These are the most ridiculous, stupid pieces of lawfare that I've ever seen. The Supreme Court in Israel is out of control. It's controlled by the wrong people. They need judicial reform. They need a constitution. I mean, it's just, it's, I don't even know if I would call it controlled chaos. It's very chaotic. It's very disconcerting to the people there. And it's the way it is. It's maybe even worse than our government is in many respects. So anyway, so in light of that, and there's Netanyahu is, I think, like almost everybody else in the IDF and other leadership in Israel, is subject to criticism for missing what happened on October 7th. They weren't prepared. Now, some people say they did it intentionally. I have serious doubts about that, but suffice it to say, it's clear that they were not prepared. But the question I continue to ask is this: if they took those threats serious from Hamas in Gaza, what should they have done to stop it? And the only answer I could come up with is they should do what they've been doing for the last 2 years, almost 2 years. Flatten Gaza and make it a place where people don't want to live. But now, of course, the people aren't allowed to leave because they're political pawns. We saw this. We saw the theater, was it this week, with Greta Thunberg and her little ship of a bag of flour and some baby formula. And aid, we're going to go feed Gaza. It was like 100 pounds of flour and some baby formula. And of course, when they were approached, they've been taking videos along. What did they do? They ditched their phones in the ocean. Why did they ditch their phones in the ocean? Because there's stuff on that phones that they didn't want the Israeli authorities to see. I can guarantee that 100%. So if somebody should hire a dive team and go out and get them. And I think you'll find some pretty stunning things on there. And I pretty much believe digital stuff, once you create it, it's almost impossible to get rid of it. And so there's a lot of stuff floating around DC on hard drives and stuff that is people need to get access to. And I'm understanding is that there were things that have been hidden, even within the FBI, hiding from other FBI people who are investigating things related to the information. It's totally out of control. And it's pretty clear that there are people with agendas that are not working in our best interest. So on Thursday, Prime Minister Netanyahu went to the Western Wall, the Kotel, in Israel. Some people call it the Wailing Wall. I don't think that Israelis particularly care for that name of it. So I call it the Western Wall or the Kotel. You've all seen pictures of it. And by the way, what you see there is less than 10% of what's really there. So if you ever go to Israel, and we hope to do this fall, go to the Western Wall tunnels, and you will see that Western Wall and how far it extends. It's shocking how much is there. So he went there and he put this note in the wall. And that's the tradition. You write a prayer out or a prayer request and you put it in the wall. So, and they come through and they clean those out every now and then, unless you're a celebrity or important person like a Donald Trump or a Benjamin Netanyahu. When Netanyahu sticks something in the wall, people are going to go get it immediately. And he wrote there, as he mentioned in his speech, he did this on Thursday, the day the attack took place. And it says, the nation rises like a young lion and lifts itself like a lion. It's from Numbers chapter 23. And in the rotation for Torah portions, so every week there's a Torah portion, there's a section from the Psalms and a section from the Tanakh. And it rotates so that every year they go through the entire Torah. And it's interesting, and I believe that in the very near future, in the next week or two or three, the Torah portion that's coming up is Numbers chapter 23, this particular section. And having followed this for a while, you can get the Torah portion calendars at any number of locations. It's amazing how relevant It is. It's almost shocking. It's almost like it's almost biblical the way that it works out. It's stunning. So there are a lot of responses. I won't go through them. By the way, in the notes to this video, there's way more links. This is a small portion of everything that I would have reviewed this week. And so I'm going to pass the blessing on of having too much to read to you. And you can read some of the stuff for yourself. But here's Khomeini. He has a Twitter account. He's very active on social media. You can go to his website. You can get, and it's in English because I want to make sure everybody does it. And remember, this is the regime that a few years ago put up a video of a robot assassin on a golf course to assassinate Donald Trump. They want to take out Trump. And by the way, there's a lot of people that have misconceptions. So he said this week, several commanders and scientists have been martyred. God willing, their successors and colleagues will carry on their duties without delay. And what Israel did was this pretty incredible, what I would only describe as a decapitation strike on the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and the nuclear scientists. In fact, Khomeini should have said that it was many commanders and scientists have been martyred. And there's lists of them and pictures of them, heads of the, this is Lieutenant General Hossein Salami was killed in an attack. And what they did was there's videos, I think some of them are linked in the show notes. You can go and you can see the residential buildings in Tehran where a lot of these guys lived. And it's pretty clear they lived in penthouse apartments. I was joking with a friend. I said, is there a Bible verse that says, woe to those who live in penthouse apartments because your end is coming? And they took them out in very surgical strikes. There were missiles, I believe they got them from the United States, Hellfire missiles. They flew them in windows and they exploded and they took it out. Now, there were other civilians that were killed. That's always going to happen. There's civilians killed in Israel over the last few days as well, including children and like a 1-year-old and 4-year-old. And maybe just, it's war, and that's going to happen. So here's a Trump tweeted on June 12th, so that would be Thursday, 5:09. We remain committed to a diplomatic resolution to the Iran nuclear issue. My entire administration has been directed to negotiate with Iran. They could be a great country, but they first must completely give up hopes of obtaining a nuclear weapon. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, that tweet or post on True Social took place before the Israel attack. There are now articles, don't know if I have, you ought to see the mess this is. And I mean, I work, I get up at 3 o'clock on Sundays and it wasn't like I could get everything cleaned up. It's just, there were a lot. So there are a number of newspapers. In fact, I think the Jerusalem Post today has a big article, and I think the Wall Street Journal as well, about how Israel used deception. They used the United States trying to negotiate a deal as cover. And it appears that in some respects it worked, that the Iranians fell for it. So look at what's happened. Remember, we had the beeper attacks. Before that, they had taken out Hania and Tehran. They had taken out some Iranian revolutionary heads in Damascus, and they were decapitating them. Then I think the beepers happened, and then they took out Nasrallah. Yeah, they took out Nasrallah after, and they decapitated him. And you would think that since those were all Iranian assets that were taken out back last fall from Hamas and Hezbollah, that they would have protected these guys, right? You would think that. But here they were living in these penthouse towers that with modern targeting and GPS and everything, they can fly a bomb from over 1,000 miles away into your, well, or from a plane flying along at 500 miles an hour, they can fly a missile or whatever into your penthouse apartment window and take you out. It's pretty amazing. And you would think that maybe they might do something to prevent that, but they didn't because they were complacent, they were arrogant, and there's a lot of Bible verses about what happens to the arrogant and the proud, and they think they're going to get away with it. So there was some indication that Israel was planning this operation. They had not, determined that they were going to move forward, but they were waiting to see on the nuclear deadlines. And so they did a couple of things. So back about 60 days ago, 60 days before June 12th, 61 days, Trump said, we're going to get this deal done in 60 days. We need to get this deal done in 60 days. So Israel took that as a time marker. And the attack occurred on the 61st day. And you would think that the Iranians would say, we have 60 days and it's coming up on 61. Oh, well, Israel won't do anything. Are you sure about that? Now, in hindsight, that looks pretty, like, not very smart. Just like, we have to admit, October 7th was a very significant day, a very important day on the calendar, and Israel missed it. We have to be honest about that. And people had warnings about it. So that was an amazing part of the operation. Iran has had, I'm just going to show you some of their sites. This, and I can't remember the translation of this now. I had it somewhere in my notes and I forgot to put it in there. But it essentially says, we're going to respond. We're going to really come after you. And you can kind of see it's almost like a flame that they're talking about. They have this is on their website, True Promise, and you can see they've identified Mount Hermon, Nevatim, Ramon. There's also a lot of tweets from Iranian assets, Iranian intelligence, Iranian military talking about Dimona. Oh, you're going to attack our nuclear facility? We're going to attack your nuclear facility at Dimona. Now, to date, the big nuclear plant in Iran that's open to everybody is Bushehr. They have not attacked Bushehr. And I think Israel's thinking, if we do that, then certainly they're going to attack Dimona. And we don't want that. That could be a big problem. And it's particularly in our area where it's a small country, if you have a nuclear leak. There has been attacks on Natanz and some of the underground nuclear facilities, but most of those attacks have been not on the nuclear part of that, which may be buried very far underground and very difficult to attack, as we've talked about in the past. But they have attacked the power plants that would be supplying them. So at Bushehr, they have made attacks. Israel first was attacking military installations, air defenses, missile launchers, and they were not attacking the nuclear facility directly. The other thing that Israel did was they took out a large number of the nuclear scientists. I have a graphic somewhere of that. Here we go. Okay, so that's 9. I just was reading some information that it's actually 14 of the top nuclear scientists in Iran have been eliminated. Now, they have not got the top guy who's really seems to be in charge. But you remember they took out, what was his name? Farzi Zaked or something like that, a couple of years ago in a robotic, AI-driven machine gun attack in Tehran. And by the way, in part of this attack, there are videos out there of Israeli agents, whether they're Iranian or Mossad, I don't know, launching drones within Iran. There are also pretty good information now that they actually set up a plant to manufacture these drones within Iran, very similar to what the Ukrainians did. And there are also pictures of large transport planes taking off from Iran, which they believe Israel was taking the agents that had been involved in this operation, they were taking them back to Israel or someplace else. It's an amazing operation. So again, Tabriz, an air base, lots of things going on in Tehran. And by the way, as Prime Minister Netanyahu mentioned, we're doing this to attack the Iranian regime, not the Iranian people. And Israel's been very careful, not 100% perfect, they've been very careful not to go after the civilian population. Unlike Iran, by the way, there's been hundreds of missiles, ballistic missiles, launched into Israel. Some of them gotten through, they've overwhelmed the system. And sometimes when you watch the videos of them, you'll see them come in almost a straight line, one right after the other. I believe that's by design, because it's designed to overwhelm the system, because the system sees the first one coming, fires at it, and then there's ones coming right behind it. And so there's been at least, I believe, 10 people killed, 300 injured, some critically in Israel. In Tel Aviv, the IDF headquarters was hit. It's war. I mean, this is war. I have many friends in Israel. I've been communicating with them. One of my friends said that her daughter said, "We're not going to get killed by a missile. We're going to die from exhaustion," because they've gotten about 15 minutes sleep in 3 nights. And it's wearing, and there are sirens and warnings. I have the Zofar app, and it goes off all the time. So this is one of the examples of all of those red areas are not necessarily targets, but they're areas where there's a warning. And they've issued countrywide commands: go to your bomb shelter. Or you can come out of your bomb shelter, but you should be within a minute or two of your bomb shelter. So people are running to the store, racing through the aisles to try to get something in case they have to get to their bomb shelter. They want to be able to take the groceries with them. It's very, very disruptive to life. Same thing's going on in Iran with the attacks from Israel. This is Israel. And it's interesting that the Iranian papers haven't really been publishing much. So Tehran Times is a newspaper I read most every day, but they haven't really published any newspaper for a few days. Cayenne International, that's also a regime newspaper. They did publish something for today, and they have a picture of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard people that were taken out. I also saw an article this morning, the chief of police of Tehran may have been assassinated. And they're saying we're going to ruin the Iranian regime. And they publish these posters. For example, here's some posters that they have put up on social media. And everybody's making sort of dark humor social media posts. That's Iran. Iran has reportedly shot down a couple F-35s, captured the pilots, and so this is their, the sword of Iran has shattered the F-35s. And you see the sword is used a lot in the Iranian propaganda thing. So this is the Times of London editorial cartoon. And I just think I love editorial cartoons because they really say a lot. And I think this one says a lot that these people are playing roulette with war for the world. And it shows Khomeini and Netanyahu. And that's sort of why, that's one of the reasons why I had the title today. Time is running out. You see the time sands. That's the Ayatollah's glasses at the bottom. And the Iranian chess king that's broken now. And it's a big problem. And I believe that one of the goals is regime change. Let's see. So Natanz enrichment site, as I said, I don't know that they've been able to reach the underground facilities. I don't know that Israel has the logistical capability of attacking these facilities, some of which are buried 270 or 300 feet underground. And as I told you, as Pam and I drove around the West, I kept looking at these mountains and thinking that they put something in that mountain, they drilled down underneath that mountain. How do you bomb that? What kind of force would it take to destroy that? Now, there might be a force, but there's also forces that it would be very difficult to use. So this is Trump. 60 days ago, he said this the day after the attack in the morning. 2 months ago, I gave Iran a 60-day ultimatum to make a deal. They should have done it. Today is day 61. I told them what to do, but they just couldn't get there. Now they have perhaps a second chance. And so Witkoff is running around. And who knows? I mean, who knows? Maybe there's some indications today from some of the social media posts by the Iranians that, excuse me, that they're interested in talking. But you have to understand, maybe this is a good place to do this. Iranians had a massive intelligence failure. But what is one of the things, I know I said this on a podcast this week, one of the things the Iranians, Trump wants a deal. To us in the West, a deal is a deal. The Iranians want to negotiate. That's their art of the deal. And they get a deal by not making a deal because they continue to enrich their materials. So, in fact, there was a tweet today. Here it is. This guy has a thing called United Against Nuclear Iran, and they put out a publication 2 months ago. There's a link to it in the show notes. We often hear claims about Iranians being very good negotiators, but this is in part because the West is completely unfamiliar with the nuances of the Iranian Islamist psyche, which shapes the Islamic Republic's negotiating approach. Here is a guide. And so they go through. I'm going to give you the 10 negotiating tactics, which include this: deception. The grass can be greener, promising vague future rewards to keep talks alive without offering anything concrete. And just think back of all the Iranian negotiations we've been reading about for years. This is exactly what they do. So you can get this PDF and you can read a nice, well-done thing. Good cop, bad cop, exploiting the illusion of political pluralism in Iran. Use moderates versus hardliners to extract concessions, even though all power lies with the supreme leader. Next one, the promise of lucrative post-sanctions business. We want to make a deal and we're going to do business. We're going to do big, beautiful business with you. And you got to be very careful that you don't get seduced by that claim. Next one, opportunities, dangling phantom investment deals to lure Western governments and companies, then pull the rug. And by the way, this applies to Qatar, to some extent Saudi Arabia, United Arab. It's the way they do business, the way they negotiate the deals, the way they approach everything. It is a totally different mindset. It is a foreign mindset to us in the West. And the Iranians will say, well, yeah, we have a deal. And what are they? They're doing something completely opposite in the background. It happens all the time. The art of ambiguity. The next, well, here's one. Fanciful, alarmist threats. issuing exaggerated threats to stir anti-war sentiment and paralyze tough policymaking in the U.S. Qatar does this. I'm going to talk about it in a minute. You see people on the American right, the American MAGA right, I would call them the woke right now, falling for this. We have nothing to do with Iran. If we do anything with Iran, we're going to have a war, and we don't want to be drawn into Israel's wars. We saw some of the most prominent people in that woke right tweeting this week. I'll talk about that in just a moment. Running down the clock and cosmetic concessions is another one. Engaging in endless, exhausting talks to delay action, offering superficial gestures to avoid real consequences. The art of ambiguity, resisting clear commitments, relying on vague language to allow deniability while still benefiting from deals. Another one, a post-colonial victimization narrative, invoking historical grievances to justify current behavior and shifting blame to the West. Next one, divide and conquer, causing an exploding rifts within Western alliances between the U.S. and Europe, between the U.S. and Israel. And we saw that this week. There was supposed to be a big UN conference this week. What was the subject of the UN conference? Sponsored by France and Saudi Arabia. We're going to do a two-state solution. We're going to force it on Israel. We're going to shove it down their throats whether they like it or not. Guess what happened this week? France canceled the conference. There's an interesting, let me see if I have that, because that was a very funny, there is some good dark humor coming out of this. Oh, well, I'll have to, hang on, let me pull it up. I know I sent it to some of my friends in Israel, but I didn't publish it. It's, by the way, every one of my devices is just crammed full of stuff. Okay, so here was a tweet. It was by Dr. Eli David. He's probably, next to Elon Musk, he's the most popular person on X. Very smart guy. He says this, breaking from today's phone call between Macron and Netanyahu. Now, this is tongue-in-cheek humor. And it says, Netanyahu, President Macron, I need your help with Iran. Macron, no way. France won't join your attack. Netanyahu, actually, I wanted you to teach them how to surrender. And sometimes there's some really, I love humor because it's a way of telling some really hard truths without getting smashed in the face, most of the time. So the negotiating is a problem. This is a young, I say young lady, she appears young to me, so it's all relative. This will show you, this is an interesting tweet from the IDF showing that, see the difference? This is where the IDF targeted, this is where Iran's targeting, all civilian populations. In fact, my suspicion is that some of the buildings that were hit with missiles are older buildings. They don't have upgraded safe rooms. They're not as structurally sound. So some of those buildings have collapsed. And I'm almost positive that the Iranians targeted those specifically. Israel flew it into the window of a building, but they targeted the building so the building would collapse. And listen, there are no secrets out there anymore. I mean, Google Maps, Google Earth, you can watching one of those funny videos on Facebook that pop up all the time. And they were driving, the background video was they were driving down a street in Scotland. And I recognize it because I've driven on that street in Scotland. Like now, it had nothing to do with the video, but it sort of brought back memories of, yeah, I drove down that street. I remember making that turn and going around and around that roundabout a few times before I figured out which was the fifth exit when it looked like there were 17. And my idea of an exit was apparently not the same as the GPS, but that's you don't want to hear about my problems, right? And so this is a poster in the Tehran where they put up the pictures all the time. Remember the one they had the pictures of the missiles coming in with the Temple Mount? And you'll see the pictures that There are demonstrations in Tehran with regime supporting people, and they've brought out what I call the Dome of the Rock bouncy house. They have like this inflatable Dome of the Rock, and they bring it out, they blow it up, and they parade it around. And my hope is that AI that's doing targeting someday will say, hey, that seems important that must be an important target for the Iranians. And so we'll build that into our targeting system, and then temple rebuilding problem solved, right? Israel didn't have to do anything. There was the Houthis. They were having a demonstration in Yemen. And what do you see there? They have these posters up of all 5 of the top guys from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard that were taken out in the attacks the other night. There's been some reports, I don't think it's been confirmed, that at least one attack targeted the leader of the Houthis in Yemen and may or may not have gotten him. But at least the reports are, some people were reporting that he was, but I haven't been able to confirm that. So now I want to talk about the American right. Now, there's certain programs that I do watch on occasion if I'm out doing something like hitting balls at the driving range. I'll listen to War Room on my phone. The American right is completely melting down. This is a problem. I told somebody that I'm about ready to just stop listening to them. The top people at War Room and a lot of the commentators, well, we can't be drawn into Israel's wars. This is the Jews bringing us in again. Everything is done. And what's Thomas Massey, Rand Paul, this is sort of one of my rules of life. Libertarians are morons when it comes to geopolitics. They don't understand what happens. Prove me wrong. But, they always say, well, we have so much money to Israel. And I saw Jonathan Conricus, he used to be the spokesperson for the IDF. He was on Piers Morgan this week. He was talking to an Egyptian guy. And of course, all the people said, oh, the Egyptian guy destroyed the Israeli guy. It's not what happened. But Conricus made a very good point. The Egyptian guy was complaining about all the money that the U.S. gives to Israel. Okay, there is a lot of money. It's not like cash that exchanges hands. It's much more complicated than that. But Conricus made the point, former IDF spokesperson, Israel or Egypt is the second largest recipient of foreign aid from the United States. And Tucker Carlson, who's now referred to by, he and Mark Levin are really going at it. It's kind of entertaining to watch. Mark Levin refers to Tucker Carlson, he calls him Chatsworth Catarlson, which I think is a perfect name. But there were all these people yesterday, we can't get involved in a foreign war, we can't get involved in a foreign war. And I will, whether you like Trump or not, he does sort of reach a conclusion, which you may not like, but he does reach a conclusion. So here's what Tucker Carlson said the other day. The real divide, and you can imagine he's saying this with his face all scrunched up. The real divide, so just do that, okay. The real divide isn't between people who support Israel and people who support Iran or the Palestinians. The real divide is between those who casually encourage violence and those who seek to prevent it, between warmongers and peacemakers. Who are the warmongers? Well, they would include anyone who's calling Donald Trump today to demand airstrikes and other direct U.S. military involvement in a war with Iran. On that list, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, Rupert Murdoch, Ike Perlmutter, and Miriam Adelson. At some point, they will all have to answer for this, but you should know their names now. Okay, thank you, Tucker. Personally, now I know who to follow. Because you've lost the plot, Tucker. You do not understand the Middle East. You do not understand Iran. You have fallen for all those 10 things that I just summarized for you. You have fallen for every single one of them. And Chatsworth Catarleson is a perfect name to apply to you. So Michael Shear at The Atlantic did an interview this week with and The Atlantic is a left-leaning magazine, but the interesting thing about Trump is he'll talk to anybody. And like it seems like he talks 24/7, to be honest with you. Like, take a nap, go play golf or something, and leave your phone behind. New, in a Saturday phone call with me, Trump pushes back on mega opponents of U.S. support for Israel attack on Iran. Well, considering that I'm the one, he says this, considering that here's from the article. When I caught Donald Trump by phone this morning, the president wanted to make one thing clear. America first means whatever he says it does. Well, considering that Trump said, considering that I'm the one that developed America first, and considering that the term wasn't used until I came along, I think I'm the one that decides that, Trump told me. He continued, for those people who say they want peace, you can't have peace if Iran has a nuclear weapon. So for all of those wonderful people who don't want to do anything about Iran having a nuclear weapon, that's not peace. And I say, you know what? That's right. Whether you can hate Trump, but you cannot say that he's incorrect on that. The article continues, his remarks, this is the Michael Shears, the author of the article at The Atlantic, his remarks were a response to my question about critics such as Tucker Carlson, who have loudly argued against U.S. support of Israel during its attacks on Iran. As an anathema to the America First way of doing things, over the course of our conversation, the president defended his efforts to bring an end to multiple conflicts despite growing violence in the Middle East. He also struck an overall optimistic tone about world affairs. I think we have done very well, he said, of his administrative efforts. And by the way, we've got these protests going on across America. We've got these judges issuing these ridiculously illegal, stupid, unfounded injunctions. It's totally out of control. And the interesting thing, I have a video here. You can see that these things kind of circle around. Well, I'll get to it if I have time. So all the newspapers, Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, Trump's anti-war pledge tested amid mega-based fear of a fresh conflict. And by the way, these were all accurate. Everybody was concerned about this. Doubts raised over Israel's ability to go it alone. They talk about Tehran retaliation. They have some options. Tehran's residents left reeling. And, so there was all these articles, but a lot of them focus on the fact that there's a split on the Trump support in America, and there is. I listened to the programs. I read Tucker Carlson's tweets. I read, pray for my mental sanity, Candace Owens' tweets. And a lot of it, by the way, in the case of Tucker and Candace, it's based on really, really bad theology and conspiracy theories that have long been proven to be frauds, but they kind of recycle. So, a great article. There is a link in the show notes. I think I put a link in there that will get you past the paywall if you're one of the first ones. I think there's a limit. How Israel's Mossad smuggled drone parts to attack Iran from within. It's very good. Here's a follow-up statement that Netanyahu made, I think, yesterday.
I want to start by wishing a double happy birthday. First, happy birthday to you, President Donald J. Trump. You've been an extraordinary leader, decisive, courageous, clear vision, clear action. You have done great things for Israel. You've been an extraordinary friend to the Jewish state and to me personally. We've known each other for many years, and we appreciate what you're doing now, helping protect Israeli lives against the criminal regime in Iran. I want to wish also a 250th happy birthday to the American Army. The men and women of the armed services of the United States have protected freedom for 2.5 centuries. We would not have a free world without you. Thank you on behalf of free peoples everywhere. Today, Israel is defending freedom in the Middle East and beyond. We're doing so against a tyrannical and radical Iranian regime that wants to build atomic bombs to destroy us and wants to build ballistic missiles, including intercontinental ballistic missile, to be able to threaten anyone and everywhere in the world. By defending ourselves, we're also defending others. We're defending our Arab neighbors, our Arab friends in peace. We're defending Europe. We're helping defend also the United States, which helps us all the time in our defense. This is an important mission. Right now, the Iranian regime is bombing our civilian neighborhoods while we are targeting the terrorists. Now, this is not new. They've tried to assassinate President Trump twice. They bombed American embassies. They killed 241 Marines in Beirut. They killed and injured thousands of Americans with their IEDs in Iraq and Afghanistan. They burn the American flag. They chant endlessly, "Death to America." Our enemy is your enemy. And by doing what we're doing, we're dealing with something that will threaten all of us sooner or later. Our victory will be your victory. How do we intend to achieve that victory? Well, we've already done great things. We've taken out their senior military leadership. We've taken out their senior technologists who are leading the race to build atomic weapons that would threaten us, but not only us. We've done all that and many other things. But we are also aware of the fact that there's more to be done. So we're preparing. We paved the way to Tehran, and our pilots over the skies of Tehran will deal blows to the Ayatollah regime that they cannot even imagine. And I can tell you this. We have indications that senior leaders in Iran are already packing their bags. They sense what's coming. I'll tell you what would have come if we hadn't acted. We had information that this unscrupulous regime was planning to give the nuclear weapons that they would develop to their terrorist proxies. That's nuclear terrorism on steroids. That would threaten the entire world. This is what Israel is doing with the support, the clear support of the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and the American people, and many others in the world. So with God's help, and with the goodwill and resolution of all free societies, we shall win.
And so what you see is, I think this is an AI-generated thing of, but he who touches you touches the apple of his eye. That's from Zechariah chapter 2. And I think we're seeing this play out right in front of us. And there's a lot of things that people are doing. So there were reports. We knew the attack was coming. How did they know the attack was coming? I don't know. There must be an app to track this. They were tracking how much pizza was ordered to be delivered to the Pentagon on Thursday. Because they figure these guys are going to be sitting around eating pizza because they're going to be up all night. I mean, this is Newsweek magazine, by the way, so it's hardly a fly-by-night. But look at this. This is a picture of a protest. We saw protests all this weekend, right? Pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian, the keffiyehs everywhere. And yesterday, those protests continued, but there was a subtle change. Look at this video on the right. The fact that the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign has suddenly become the Iranian Solidarity Campaign is indicative of the fact that it's nothing more than an anti-Israel hate group. And I would include Tucker Carlson within this group. It's clear, and I've been told by people inside Fox, it was clear this was his opinion years ago. He just never talked about it. He got paid millions by the Murdochs, and now he's making millions from other people funding him. The mask is off, and you can see what he's really on. And so this is another one that Wall Street Journal reporting this morning. Iran's supreme leader is not off limits in Israel's strike, Israeli officials say. And that's true, but we got to go back to the negotiating for just a moment. And then I have one thing to do, and I will finish, even though I'm not done, but you've endured enough. So here is, her name is Navari. I can't remember her first name. She's talking about how the Iranians negotiate. This was on Fox on Friday or Saturday.
One of my friends whose mother lives in Iran, she called him and said, tell Mr. Trump we're ready for his bombs. The people of Iran want to be set free. But I do want to comment a little bit about negotiations and having talks with Iran. Mm-hmm. Every person in the U.S. and elsewhere that is of Iranian descent understands this government will shake your hand in diplomacy with their right hand and will be enriching uranium in secret with their left hand. This democratic, the Democrats thinking that the Iranians believe what we believe and think the way Americans believe is naive and it's narcissistic. The Iranians do not understand negotiation. They see it as a weakness. They love to talk, they love these delays, and meanwhile they're continuing to enrich uranium. The only language this Iranian regime understands is force. It is the only language they respect and they will listen to. And overwhelming power, like what Israel did tonight, is the only way to achieve peace in that region. So, and I want to say one more thing. Iran is not Iraq. The American people, look at Iraq and they say we got rid of Saddam Hussein and somebody worse came in. Maybe the people of Iraq are not ready for democracy. The people of Iran are ready for democracy and they're hungry for it. And I hope that the weakening of this regime in Iran by what Israel has done tonight will allow them to rise up and take the beautiful country back.
By the way, I saw videos from Tehran and other cities in Iran. As the missiles are flying and the people are dancing in the streets. Now, there have been reports of big Christian revival, I guess, in Iran. I pray that that's true. I'm always skeptical of these things, so don't take my skepticism as being a wet blanket. I try to be a realist in these things, and I pray that it's true. But assuming that that's true, that there's a lot of things that are happening here. So I have one more thing. Well, by the way, negotiating with the Iranians is well known in the Arab world as a big problem. This is from 60 Minutes 8 years ago. A guy named, you would know as Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. He had, I believe, just been named as the Crown Prince in 2017 when he gave this interview. This is a 1-minute clip of him speaking to 60 Minutes in 2017.
You've been rivals for centuries. At its heart, what is this rift about? Is it a battle for Islam?
Iran is not a rival to Saudi Arabia. Its army is not among the top 5 armies in the Muslim world. The Saudi economy is larger than the Iranian economy. Iran is far from being equal to Saudi Arabia.
But I've seen that you called the Ayatollah Khamenei the new Hitler of the Middle East.
Absolutely.
Why?
Because he wants to expand. He wants to create his own project in the Middle East, very much like Hitler, who wanted to expand at the time. Many countries around the world and in Europe did not realize how dangerous Hitler was until what happened happened. I don't want to see the same events happening in the Middle East.
Does Saudi Arabia need nuclear weapons to counter Iran?
Saudi Arabia does not want to acquire any nuclear bomb. But without a doubt, if Iran developed a nuclear bomb, we will follow suit as soon as possible.
By the way, there's also a very famous video clip, you can easily find it, of another one of the Saudi princes talking about Qatar. And I don't understand this. If Tucker Carlson did a minute of research, he would find this video. And in that video, you look it up, the Saudi prince says, they ask him about Qatar, and he says, we don't have anything to do with them. We don't like them. They live right next door. Why don't we listen to some of these people when they say these things? We act like we're so much smarter. We don't understand Islam in the West. We don't understand how the Iranians negotiate. Talked about it a lot. And I hope President Trump and his team is getting the message of what we've gone through. Sometimes, listen, Iran negotiates their way. Israel's been negotiating their way this week, and I'm glad for that. So there's two ways to negotiate. You can sit down at the table, or you can file lawsuits and all this stuff, or you can attack. So I'm going to talk about one more thing. So I've got a Technocracy roundtable, Technocracy, Transhumanism, Technology, AI roundtable coming up on June 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern. Patrick Wood, Britt Gillette, Scott Townsend, Pete Garcia. And believe me, we have a lot to talk about. And Patrick's thesis, he did a great talk out in Phoenix last week, and I think I mentioned it last Sunday, about this technocracy thing is almost unstoppable. And it's a big quandary. Talking to friends that are journalists in D.C., texting with them this week, there's no regulation. The new bill that's coming out that may be approved says no regulation by any state for 10 years on artificial intelligence. I don't like that. But we live in a world where nobody's regulating it. And how do we as a country develop and protect ourselves when nobody else? You understand, it's a huge quandary. It's very difficult to deal with. I don't think unless we do Eliezer Lukowski's idea is we just bomb all the server farms, that may be the only way. But I just don't see it happening. And this technocracy, you need to understand, is happening on every level from every direction. Now, I'm not a fan of Vladimir Putin. I hope that that's been made clear. He has a very huge religious aspect to what he's doing. He views himself as the last protector of the Orthodox Christian faith on the planet, and we're going to establish this. This is very problematic to me. This week in Russia, Alexander Dugin, sometimes referred to as Putin's Rasputin, his spiritual mystic advisor, he's big on Eurasia. They had this big conference. You can find the videos online. They're all translated, dubbed into English. And there are hours and hours and hours of these. I've not had time to go through very many of them. The Russia 2050, we all talk about 2030. Everybody's doing 2030, right? Well, Russia's now doing 2050. So it says the Russia 2050 Image of the Future Conference. The Russia 2050 Image of the Future Conference held on June 9-10, 2025 at Moscow State University was organized by the Tsargrad Institute. And so and this is kind of a picture. And this is Moscow 2050. And you'll see one of the things they were saying at this is, now, I want you to just kind of translate into this what we read about Bible prophecy and Ezekiel 38 and that type of thing. And I don't think we're there yet, but I just see this as kind of a whoa moment. Because what they're tying in is this kind of religious idea, a date in the future, and technocracy. So look at these discussion questions. Fighting for souls and minds, ideology of sovereign Russia. The new great powers concept, Russia foreign policy in the second quarter of the 21st century. That's 2025 to 2050. Wars of the future, gamification of war. Russian space, the race for Mars. Isn't there somebody in America that's kind of big on Mars? Special operation, demography, how to ensure an increase in the birth rate. I've been talking about demography for 8 years, at least. And I don't think that Putin's listening to me, but I'm just saying it's a huge issue for the world going forward, and they're talking about it. New migration policy strategy, it's related to demography because it's declining in Russia. Organizational recruitment, Russian Kafala, Russia as an ark of salvation. Do you see the mystical, religious component to this? Technological development, robotization instead of mass migration. wait a minute. That's AI. That's technocracy, right? Spatial development. And I'm just telling you, all these little Putin fanboys on the right are falling for this. This, I really believe more. I mean, Patrick said it a week ago. This is the beast system, I think. Digital sovereignty, AI in the service of Russia, spatial development from megacities to one-story Russia, patriotic education, the image of the hero of our time. Here's some of the talks they have. The city of the future, Moscow 2050, the best city on earth. Multipolar world in the 21st century. Guests from the future, demography, forum of the future. Family First 2050, Russia space, race for Mars. Geopolitics and migration 2050, the world, Russia, and the climate agenda. And guess what I'm trying to say is, I hear all this Putin's against World Economic. This is the World Economic Forum in Russian language. Am I right? Here it is. Prove me wrong. Go watch the videos. Go read Dugin's blog. Cyber Wars and Information Security. And who spoke at this conference? Well, let's look at some of these people. Here we go. Of course, here's Lavrov, Foreign Secretary of Russia. Here we go down here, George Galloway, big leftist from the UK. You see him at all these conferences. You see him on Piers Morgan and stuff all the time. Let's go. Jeffrey Sachs, one of Tucker. He was just on Tucker Carlson the other day. He's a pro-China Agenda 2030 UN Marxist, communist, absolutist, pro-Russian. Jeffrey Sachs. He was just on Tucker Friday because he was fresh off the conference in Moscow. Let's see. So Jeffrey Sachs, Alex Jones. You ought to give you some pause on that one. Because there are things that these guys do that we like, okay? But you got to understand, there's a big overarching agenda behind all of this. So let's go down here to, third one in the middle at the top. Elon Musk, Elon's father. Elon's grandfather was one of the founding members of Technocracy in the world in Canada. So much so that Canada wanted to put him in prison for treason. So he fled to South Africa. How Elon ended up being born in South Africa. Anyway, I'm just telling you, I mean, I'm looking at this and it just blew my mind. It really did. And I don't know how it just popped up in my feed somehow. Oh, I follow Alexander Dugin on Telegram. And, well, you want to go down a rabbit hole? Follow somebody like that. I mean, if you sleep at night after that, you're a good sleeper. So I'm still sleeping. I'm just telling you, folks, we live, so I go back to my title today. Running out of time. On the prophetic clock, we are on many, many, many levels. In fact, I would say on virtually every level that we're watching at, time's getting short. How close to the midnight hour? I don't know. But it's close. So pay attention, stay in the Word. You can follow these guys, but don't be duped by them. That's always the thing. You got to listen to what they say, understand their arguments, but stay in the Word and be firm in the faith, not wavering. Pray for opportunities to share the gospel because, boy, I do think we live at a very disruptive time, and that's a great opportunity to share the gospel. So let's pray. And again, I've got some things coming up this week, so follow the YouTube channel or me on social media, and those will come up. So let's pray. Lord, thanks so much for your word. Lord, pray that you will always keep us rooted in the faith, guided by the Holy Spirit, committed to the truth, and always looking for opportunities to share the gospel with those around us because time is short. Of this, we have no doubt. Bless us this week. In Jesus' name, amen.